Okay, so we're ready to do our first cut. So I've cut out my stock, and you can see I've identified the center point here, which matches up with the XYZ that I have defined inside of Fusion. As I mentioned, it's a good idea to measure your stock with a good set of calipers. This stock is measuring 0.77 on this side, and 0.78 or 0.775 on this side, so I'll probably set my stock to 0.77. So let's do that. So here I'm going to edit. So remember, in this example I actually modeled the stock piece so that I could keep the corners clear for my clamps, and then here's my original. And now I'm going to make this 0.77 as well. I'm going to switch back to my manufacturing workbench and regenerate all my tool paths. Now we're ready to set up the machine. I'm going to start carbide motion. I'm going to turn the machine on. Connect the cutter. And the first thing you're going to see here is a homing feature. Now what I'm going to do is just wrap it into the middle. I often use this middle section here as a way to identify my 0 point. We'll go back to the original spot. So now what I'm going to do is clamp this down. You can see I'm using these clamps here. I'll just use an extra clamp to go under here to give this some support. Okay, so now you can see kind of the hold down strategy that I have for this particular part. Probably way too much, but you can never have it too sturdy in any case. I'm not going to use my touch probe here, just so I can show you the manual method of centering your object. First thing I'm going to do is just verify inside of Fusion where I have my XYZ. And we can see that our XYZ is located right in the middle, just like we've identified on our stock with the drawn X on the part. I'm just going to wrap it to the center. It's not going to be close to where I need it to be, but it gets me there quickly. And now I'm just going to start using the individual moves, the jog features, to get me close to my X. We'll set this up for fast movement initially. I'll get closer. Go down into the Z, then I'll change the increment to maybe 1 millimeter. And now I'll just slowly eyeball it to get it close to where I need to. So you can see we're pretty well set. I haven't done anything in carbide motion yet to set the 0, but that looks pretty good. I've lowered my cutting tool close so I can see exactly where things might be, get a better representation of that center point that I've drawn, and now I'm ready to set the 0 inside of carbide motion. Here I'm going to use set 0, I'm going to set 0, X, and I'm going to set Y. Now what I'm going to use is a post-it note to set my Z by slowly lowering my tool to where I can feel some friction. Right now I have my increment set to 0.1 millimeter. Right here you can see I have some friction. I'm still able to pull out the paper. Now I'm going to set 0 for Z. I'm going to change my increment and just move my Z up at a safe distance. Now we're ready to start cutting. So let's go back to Fusion. So even though all these operations use the same tool, I'm just going to do one at a time. So I'll select this object here, or this toolpath operation, and I'm going to choose post-process. Here I've got the Carbide 3D post-processor selected. I'll choose OK, and then I'll save it to my folder where I store all my G-code. We'll give it a name. Here you can see it loads the G-code up for you if you want to examine it. Now I'm going to go to Carbide Motion, load new file, bring in Smiley, and now we're ready to cut. What I did on my first job was I'm going to go back to jog here. I'm going to set my Z a little higher. And I'm going to zero it out because I want to do a test run by cutting some air on this first operation just to make sure I have everything in place. So now I'm ready to cut something. No need to turn it on, the spindle on. I'm just going to run the application. Whenever I run the first operation, I always have the switch in hand so that if something happens, I can quickly turn it off. The last thing before it starts, it's going to ask you for the tool, and we'll hit continue. So I paused it temporarily. If we look at Fusion, we can see that the tool path is going to start over to the left of where the tool is correctly positioned right now. And then I'm just going to hit start to resume the tool path. In this case it looks good. I'm ready to start cutting. One of the things you might have heard at the very beginning is that when it went to the height of the Z, it hit its maximum spot. And so that meant that I would have probably lost some Z steps in this particular operation. And that's because I set the Z really high for this air cut. So you want to make sure you listen to your machine at the very beginning. If you hear any kind of colliding in any direction, then you're going to miss steps and you're going to ruin your cut. Now I'm just going to recenter or reset my zero and actually cut something. I shouldn't have the problem with colliding up in the Z direction once I set it to the correct height.